Welcome to Must Have Missed It, the podcast about how James hasn't seen any movies.
Hey, maybe you get high off watching movies, but I get high off the people.
What's that famous movie you're always quoting, the one you and your friends can't stop referencing? There's a really good chance James has never seen it.
That kind of feels like a personal attack at this point.
But that's why we're here. I'm forcing James to watch a whole bunch of movies I think he probably should have seen already.
I've run out of excuses, man. Of COVID?
I am Josh, and I am a revolutionary. And this is my co-host.
I'm James, and as you know, I am a firm anti-foot capitalist. Dig in? Dig in?
You should dig into the YouTube channel where we have so many videos. There's so many videos, folks. Check them out.
A ton of them.
Subscribe, comment. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Occasionally, we'll post stuff on TikTok. We haven't been doing that very frequently, but we promise to be better. Send your emails to musthavemissed@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at musthavemissed. Follow us on Twitter at musthavemissed, and make sure you join the Discord.
Do all the things.
All the things. Push all the buttons. Come on, help us out. So, James, what movie are we talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about Judas and the Black Messiah.
And what did you know about this film going into it?
Well, this being a movie based off of actual events, I knew quite a bit. But as far as the movie goes with casting, direction, I really didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So the extent of my knowledge was the actual events that happened with
right.
Fred Hampton. So
yeah, I believe this is another movie that was on their roulette wheel.
Yeah.
Never came up. So now we get to do it on the podcast, which is good timing because this is Black History Month. So we wanted to focus on movies that focused on Black history. And the story of Fred Hampton is an important story that needed to be told. And I'm glad we got this film. So that's pretty much the reason why we picked this movie. On the how have you not seen this movie meter, I would say this movie's 5, 6, not super high. It's a movie that, we've talked about in the past, but, not surprised you didn't seen it. Haven't seen it, I guess. It's a movie that came out, during the pandemic when theaters were pretty much shut down. Most people that saw this movie probably saw it on HBO Max, which is where I saw it. So I can't say I'm super surprised you haven't seen this movie. So, Judas and the Black Messiah. It's the story of how the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton, was betrayed by an FBI informant named William O'Neill. There were attempts to get a Fred Hampton biopic made for several years before this movie got greenlit. Separate versions, one by Kenny and Keith Lucas, the comedy duo known as the Lucas Brothers, had been pitched to a few different studios, including A24 and Netflix. Simultaneously, Will Burson was working on a different version of a biopic for Fred Hampton. Shaka King, the eventual director of Judas and the Black Messiah, worked with the Lucas Brothers on a television pilot and was intrigued by their pitch for a Fred Hampton project. Burson's script actually got greenlit and went into early production with F. Gary Gray, director of Friday and The Fate of the Furious, two completely different movies, as a possible director, and Jaden Smith and O'Shea Jackson Jr. as front runners to portray Hampton. Wow, that would have been a very different movie with Jaden Smith in the lead role. I don't think I could have watched this movie.
I mean, O'Shea maybe, but
yeah,
Jaden,
O'Shea might have been able to pull it off, but Jaden Smith, whoa, that'd be a rough movie. Luckily, that fell through. So Shaka King helped Burson rewrite a script with additional help from the Lucas Brothers. Ryan Coogler agreed to produce alongside Shaka King and Charles D. King, who the Lucas Brothers recruited and whose company Macro paid half of the $26 million production cost. The cast for this film includes Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton, chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, legendary orator, and revolutionary. Lakeith Stanfield as Bill O'Neill, fake FBI agent, car thief, fucking rat. Dominique Fishback as Deborah Johnson, Panther, poet, expecting mother. Jesse Plemons as Special Agent Roy Mitchell, Bill's handler, and Lobar. Probably the least worst FBI person we see in this movie, which really speaks to how fucked up the FBI was in the, well, always, really. Ashton Sanders as Jimmy Palmer, not a Panther you want to fuck with. Algie Smith as Jake Winters, the Panther you would least expect to go on a murderous rampage. Dominic Thorne as Judy Harmon, a take-no-shit security captain in the Black Panthers. Daryl Britt Gibson as Bobby Rush, co-founder of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. Martin Sheen and a fuck ton of makeup as FBI director and true human garbage, J. Edgar Hoover. Chris Davis as Steele, the apparent leader of the Crowns, a fictitious Chicago street gang. Amari Cheatham as Rod Collins, another high-up member of the Crowns. Robert Longstreet as Special Agent Carlisle, another piece of shit FBI dude. And cameo by Lil Rel Howery as Wayne, an FBI dude who dresses like a pimp. After Daniel Kaluuya was cast as Hampton, Shaka King, Kaluuya, and Charles D. King reached out to Akwa and Fred Hampton's widow, as well as Fred Hampton Jr., to get their blessing for the film. Both ended up being involved in the film as consultants, on set pretty much every day, giving feedback on scenes and characters and things like that. The original title for this film was Jesus Is My Homeboy, which is also the name of a drink at a bar that me and my friends used to frequent back in the mid-aughts. They invented the drink for us, and we got to choose the name. The drink was terrible, but the name was great. But probably not so much for this movie. Good call changing that.
Yeah, they dodged a bullet on that one. That would have been a terrible name.
Yeah, that was not going to work for this movie. Judas and the Black Messiah began filming in Cleveland, Ohio on October 21st, 2019. Scenes were also filmed at the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio for 2 days in late November. Production on the film ended December 19th, 2019. Post-production took a long time because shortly after Kristen Sprague began editing the film in January 2020, something called COVID-19 shut the whole fucking world down.
What's that?
Yeah, COVID. What is this COVID thing? Forcing crew members to work remotely to finish the film. 2 different soundtrack albums were released for this film. The first was the original motion picture soundtrack from the movie, featuring the score composed by Mark Isham and Craig Harris. The other album, Judas and the Black Messiah, the inspired album, features 22 tracks from rappers including Jay-Z and A$AP Rocky, and also includes a posthumous appearance by Nipsey Hussle. The original song, Fight For You by H.E.R., and co-written by DeMille and Tierra Thomas, would also appear on this album and would go on to win the Academy Award for Best Original Song. This film was originally going to be released on August 21st, 2020, but was, of course, delayed due to the pandemic because of the structure that Warner Brothers and HBO had chosen for releasing the films. It ended up being released simultaneously in theaters and on HBO Max, but it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on February 1st, 2021, where it was screened virtually and in person. It was released throughout the United States on February 12th, 2021, including the HBO Max streaming. The movie made $5.4 million in the U.S. and Canada and $1.4 million elsewhere, for a worldwide total, around $7 million. But it was also streamed in approximately 1.4 million households during its first month. This film was very well received by critics, sporting a 97% Rotten Tomatoes score. Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, we love Rotten Tomatoes.
It doesn't mean anything. It holds a weighted average score of 85 on Metacritic, which means slightly less than nothing, and it received an A audience score. It appeared on countless year-end top 10 lists and was nominated for a crap ton of awards, as it should have been. It received 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Original Song, and 2 separate nominations for Best Supporting Actor for Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, which is fucking garbage because who is the star of this movie if neither of the top 2 billed actors in this movie are considered a leading actor in this movie?
Right.
This reeks of bullshit. It feels like the Academy was worried that this movie was going to sweep the acting categories, and they were like, we got to put him in the same category. So Daniel Kaluuya ended up winning the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, and as I mentioned earlier, the song Fight For You won for Best Original Song. It also got nominated for 4 BAFTAs, including Best Casting, Best Cinematography, Best Actress in a Supporting Role for Dominique Fishback, and Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Daniel Kaluuya, which he won. No surprise. British actor. Go figure. Enough about this movie. What is this movie about? The film opens with a reenacted clip of Bill O'Neill's interview for the documentary Eyes on the Prize 2. The interviewer asks O'Neill what his kids would think about what he did in the 60s and 70s. Before he answers, we get a fantastic opening montage that sets the historical context for the movie, using old news footage interspersed with newspaper headlines, and gives some background on the founding of the Black Panther Party. We cut to Martin Sheen as J. Edgar Hoover telling the FBI that the Black Panthers, and especially Fred Hampton, are more dangerous than the Chinese or the Russians. We next get our introduction to Bill O'Neill, who attempts to steal a car by pretending to be an FBI agent. He makes off with the car, almost getting stabbed in the process, but he's quickly pulled over and arrested. He's staring down 6.5 years in prison for grand theft auto and impersonating a federal officer, but Special Agent Mitchell offers him a deal instead. Cue title cards, and we get our introduction to Fred Hampton, the deputy chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, who's speaking at a college. He urges the audience to understand that minor reforms are not going to lead to lasting change, and only by overthrowing the capitalist system can any people truly be free. Afterward, he's approached by Deborah Johnson, who invites him to a poetry reading and tells him to not be so aggressive towards the people he's trying to recruit. Speaking later to a group of Panthers, Hampton teaches them that war and politics are basically 2 sides of the same coin, and we see that Bill has joined up with the Panthers. There's a montage that shows the Panthers' free breakfast program for kids, and we also see that Deborah has signed on at the Panther HQ as a speechwriter. Fred tells her that he doesn't even write those bars, man. He just goes off dome. And like the best producers, Deborah argues that maybe it wouldn't hurt to do at least a little prep first. Back in the classroom, Fred catches Bill trying to run some game and forces Bill to do push-ups for disrespecting his sister in arms. Bill reports to Mitchell that the Panthers don't seem like terrorists and complains that the work is harder than he expected it to be. Mitchell offers to help, and Bill requests a car to drive Fred around in, since Fred is constantly being harassed by the police if he drives his own vehicle. Bill takes his new wheels to get Fred, Judy, Jimmy, and Bobby, and Fred collects everyone's weapons as they head to Leon's bar, a pool hall swarming with crowns, a gang antagonistic towards the Panthers. Also, this is the bar where Bill tried to steal a car at the beginning of the movie. So, sucks to be him. Fred promotes the free breakfast program and hypes the Panthers' agenda, but eventually the Crowns have heard enough. A gun is pulled on the Panthers, who leave, requesting a meeting with the boss of the Crowns. In the car afterwards, Bill is rechristened Wild Bill by Judy. Bill goes to Agent Mitchell's house, and interview footage shows that Bill thought of Mitchell as a role model. Mitchell assures Bill that he's one of the good ones, before telling Bill that the Black Panthers are exactly the same as the Ku Klux Klan. We see the FBI working on their misinformation campaign against Fred Hampton. So when the Panthers arrive to meet Brother Steele, leader of the Crowns, Steele reads one of the FBI's fake news flyers, believing it to be authentic. Hampton argues that it's obviously the FBI, but Steele doesn't quite buy it. One of the Crowns, who was at Leon's the night that Bill tried to steal the car, recognizes Bill, but before he can confront him about it, he's disciplined and told to be quiet. It goes mostly unnoticed, except by Judy. The Crowns aren't willing to team with the Panthers, so Hampton decides to look in other directions for allies. Judy and Jimmy hop in Bill's car, and he parks, and Judy begins questioning him. After a tense moment, Bill convinces Judy that he's just a car thief and he's not affiliated with the police. Fred is listening to and reciting a speech by Malcolm X when Deborah comes into the room. They share conversation about Malcolm and some coffee, and then, as things do, one thing leads to another. Jimmy, Bobby, Fred, and someone go to visit the Young Patriots, a group that they would seem to have very little in common with, but, on the things that really matter, like housing, education, policing, employment, they share common ground. He also recruits a Puerto Rican group called the Young Lords and forms a Rainbow Coalition. Hoover orders the FBI to do anything, including making up charges just to get Hampton off the streets. He's arrested for supposedly stealing $70 worth of ice cream, convicted and sentenced to 5 years. In the interim, Bill is promoted to security captain because he's good at installing alarms and such. Doesn't seem like a really great reason to promote somebody to security captain, but whatever. He arrives at HQ to find the Panthers are harboring a fugitive, George Sams, the security captain of the New Haven chapter. He tells Bill that they found a rat in their organization before torturing and eventually killing the alleged informant. Bill is clearly horrified. He meets up with Mitchell and tells him that he heard George Sams say, tells him what he heard George Sams say. Mitchell asks for a floor plan of the Panther HQ so the FBI can raid it. Mitchell takes the information to Special Agent Carlisle and finds out that George Sams is an FBI informant and the FBI already has a warrant to raid the Panthers HQ. Because Sams is a fugitive, any Panther who gives him a place to stay is guilty of harboring a fugitive, which allows them to get warrants. Fuck J. Edgar Hoover. Damn right. Mitchell seems disturbed by the way that Sams is being deployed against the Panthers. Bill arrives at Panther HQ and gives the performance of a lifetime to keep everyone off his trail, and he is delighted by his own duplicity. Fred writes a letter to an increasingly pregnant Deborah, and we get a montage of his life in prison. Out on patrol, Jimmy sees a couple of cops harassing people in the community. He pulls out his gun and is shot by the police, shooting one of them in the process. Jake attempts to go visit Jimmy in the hospital, but the cops aren't allowing any visitors in the room and force Jake to leave. Outside of Panther HQ, the police are assembled across the street. They order the Panthers to come out, but Judy has other ideas. She orders Deborah to be escorted out through the back to safety, since Deborah is now pregnant with the chairman's child. When the cops see Bill on the roof, they assume he's a sniper and begin firing on the HQ. The Panthers return fire while Bill casually strolls out the back door like a fucking coward. After Comrade White gets hit, the Panthers surrender. They're immediately brutalized and arrested, and the cops bomb the HQ. Hampton gets the news in prison that the HQ has been destroyed. Bill calls Mitchell to put in his 2 weeks, but Mitchell's not having it. The Panthers begin rebuilding their HQ with the help from the community, and in a surprising turn, the Crowns. Bill is stepping up as a leader. Mitchell meets with J. Edgar Hoover, who gloats over his quote-unquote wins, before awkwardly asking Mitchell what he'll do when his currently infant daughter brings home a black male. As I mentioned before, fuck J. Edgar Hoover, who all but says he wants Hampton dead. Hampton is released pending the results of appeal and discovers that Deborah is pregnant. He heads straight to the Panther HQ and can't believe they've already rebuilt it. The Panthers throw a party for Fred's release, but they get the news that Jimmy Palmer is dead. Jake doesn't believe it could be possible because he just talked to Jimmy. They realize the cops probably killed him, and Jake storms out. Fred takes the stage and delivers an incredibly powerful speech. Even Bill is swept up in the moment. I mean, it's hard not to be. Jake tracks down Reg, the guy he knows from the hospital, to get news about Jimmy, but Reg isn't talking. Self-preservation is his only ally, so he tells Jake to beat it and then calls the cops on him. Deborah walks in on Fred peeking at her diary and asks her about the poem she wrote called "Are You a Bad Motherfucker or Just a Bad Mother?" They have a lovely conversation, and she reads him part of the poem, which is cut together with Jake's shootout with the cops. Jake shoots a cop point blank in the head, and you see what Jimmy's murder has done to him just before the cops gun him down. Fred goes to see Jake's mother, and she makes him promise to make people remember the good person that Jake really was. Bill talks to Fred and Bobby to try to get them to blow up City Hall with C4. Fred nearly attacks Bill when Bill calls him a hypocrite. Fred and Bobby tell Bill to fuck off, but Bill leaves, revealing he was wearing a wire. Carlisle and Mitchell call Hoover to tell them that Hampton's appeal has been denied and that he'll be headed back to Menard. Hoover again all but says, "Kill Fred Hampton." Fred laments that he won't be able to protect anybody when he goes back to prison, but Deborah assures him that the party will take care of them. Bill meets Mitchell for dinner, and Mitchell orders Bill to draw a blueprint of Fred's apartment. Bill doesn't understand, and Mitchell doesn't give a fuck. Bill asks if the FBI are planning to kill Fred, and Mitchell threatens to sell Bill out as a rat to the Panthers if he doesn't cooperate. Bill goes to get a drink and gets approached by some random guy at the bar who name drops Mitchell before handing Bill a vial of some chemical. He instructs Bill to put it into his drink. Bill asks him to see his badge, and the guy hands Bill the badge that he used at the beginning of the movie when he pretended to be an FBI agent to steal the car. Everyone at Fred's later is telling him that he should make a run for it, but Fred is more focused on the mission. Bill seems shook, and he meets Mark Clark, who will soon be murdered by Chicago police. Fred tells the Panthers to take the money that the Crowns gave him to build a medical clinic and name it after Jake Winters, fulfilling his promise to Jake's mom. Bobby leaves to go home to his family, and Bill offers to get Fred a fresh drink. Bill leaves, and everyone except Mark in the apartment goes to bed. Mark sees shadows forming outside the door and quietly tries to wake everyone in the vicinity. The cops knock and then begin shooting through the front door, killing Mark. They unload round after round in the house, but Fred never wakes up. The cops start rounding everyone up. Then they walk into Fred's bedroom and shoot him twice in the head. Mitchell meets Bill and gives him his reward for all of his hard work helping the FBI execute Fred Hampton. $200 and the keys to a gas station in Maywood that he now owns. We then see the actual Bill O'Neill answering the question posed in the Eyes on the Prize 2 documentary at the beginning of the movie. He says he'll just let history speak for him. He committed suicide the night the documentary aired. Quotes from the notes. James, what you got?
Yeah. Sorry, just hearing your description just kind of took me back to where I was watching this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's so quick story on that. I was watching this movie a few nights ago, and my kid's mom came in, and she was like, she started watching the movie, and she was asking me about it, and I was telling her about it, and she's like, I don't think I watched this movie. Like, it would just make me so upset. And she's like, does this movie not upset you? And I'm like, fighting back tears, and I said, this movie makes me fucking furious.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just kind of exactly how I felt watching this movie, and I can't really describe it, but you know, it's satisfying or cathartic in the way that, you know, like fucking right, like this is a problem. People need to be aware of it.
Yeah.
When movies like this are made,
I'm glad this story got told.
Yeah. Because, you know, people like my wife, you know, not judging her. I, you know, before I asked her the question, I made sure to be like, hey, you know, I don't mean anything rude by this. I was like, but you never learned about this in school? Because like it was all brand new to her.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Fred Hampton is not a name that gets mentioned in schools. So.
Yeah. And she's like, you know, I know about Martin and I know about Malcolm, but like, no, I don't really remember ever learning about Fred Hampton. So just the fact that this movie got made, like, fuck yeah. You know, things like this need to be exposed.
Yeah.
But yeah, quotes from the notes. This is a really hard movie to, I think for everyone involved in making this movie, this had to be really difficult to even incorporate humor.
Yeah.
But when they do, man,
it's
really good.
For sure.
These dudes got rocket launchers. I think was
great. Yeah.
The first time I just burst out into laughter. You know, the moments are just so serious and everything's so tense in this movie. So when they hit, and that was really good.
Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 laugh out loud moments in this movie, and that's definitely one of them.
Jesse Plemons as Roy Mitchell. Yeah. I think that the character of Roy Mitchell is one for me that like I have a love-hate relationship in movies with, because that's a necessary evil. Yeah. And I don't mean in terms of, we're not talking about, the real life events that happen. I'm just talking about for the storytelling,
right?
His performance, his character. Like I thought it was of note because, and I mean, he does a fantastic job as kind of playing almost a similar character in Breaking Bad. But both times that I watched this movie, I just kept coming back to like, man, that fuck this guy.
Yeah.
Like, I believe this guy and fuck this guy. I just thought his performance was noteworthy. I'm not going to mention it later, so I'll mention it now. We talked about things that kind of already kind of pissed us off with this movie. That's going to be the case. But one thing in particular, when you're getting all the aftermath at the end of the movie on the title cards, after 12 years of fighting, the case that the family brought up was settled for $1.8 million.
Yeah, $47.7 million lawsuit.
They were suing for 12 years.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Why should anyone have to fight for that long under these circumstances? And it's not about the money. It's really not. No amount of money is going to bring Fred Hampton back. It's going to allow Fred Hampton to ever meet his son. But is that not a fucking slap in the face?
Absolutely.
Anywhere there's people, there's power. Man, if you're a socialist or even on the brink of wanting to learn about socialism, I mean, right there. Come on.
Yeah.
And just the several examples that I'm sure we'll touch on during this podcast that exemplify that Black people have to earn something that is a human right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fuck you.
Sure.
Fuck
you.
anyone who thinks that.
Yeah.
We're I'm not gonna get on my soapbox right now. There'll be other times for that. But fuck you, man. Like, no one needs to work any harder than anyone else to earn something that we should all just have.
Yeah. It's like Hampton says in the movie, life, liberty, happiness, it's in the Declaration of Independence. But when poor people ask for it, it's a contradiction.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm going to stop there just because I don't want to get too preachy. But what a fucking movie, man.
It's a good one. So I've got, first thing, the facial prosthetics for Martin Sheen are fucking rough in this movie. It's very distracting. From the first time he appears on screen, I'm like, what did they do to his face? Like, that is just, it's really hard to look at him and take him seriously as a person when he fucking looks like that. A badge is scarier than a gun.
Yeah,
that's a brilliant scene. Bill O'Neill explaining why he uses the means he uses to steal cars, because you see a badge and you're like, oh shit, well, they got backup. Anybody can have a gun, but somebody with a badge is somebody to be feared.
Mm-hmm.
You can't cheat your way to equality, which is, I think, kind of the line you were referencing a minute ago. That's makes me sick.
That's a line that will come up again. Yeah.
It's, what does that even mean? What literally does that fucking even mean?
Like, oh, hey, you've had this boot on your neck.
Yeah.
For hundreds of years, but you have to earn this the right way.
Yeah, please be gentle with us as we remove this boot from your neck. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, that is one of the most frustrating lines of dialogue in this entire movie to me that pisses me off more than anything in this movie. Water and escape. Imagine if this building was on fire right now.
What would your culture be?
What's your culture? Yeah. Water's my culture. What are your politics? Water and escape. Fucking brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah with, so you're saying I'm a foot capitalist? That I just absolutely love that line of dialogue.
It's such a sweet.
Yeah.
What a moment.
I mean, it shows how much those two really understand each other. That, you know, that would be the joke that they would make with each other. You know, so. Yeah. And like you said, the anywhere there's people, there's power line is just fantastic. And, you know, as my intro said, I'm obviously a big fan of the I am a revolutionary line. Right. So anything else you want to add before we go to the bourbon break?
Yeah, just a line where Fred Hampton says, we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism. We're going to fight it with socialism. Just that unwillingness to concede.
Yeah.
You know, I have a better solution for this.
Right.
I'm not going to fall in line to what you want me to do. Mm-hmm. I'm going to fight this the way that I know how, the way that feels right to me, and the way that is right. Yeah.
I mean, it kind of ties into the reform idea, you know.
Yeah.
If you're fighting capitalism with a different form of capitalism, that's reform. That is the masters teaching the slaves how to be better slaves.
Better slaves.
As Hampton says. So. Yeah. Anything else you got before the bourbon break?
I think that's it.
All right, man. Let's go smash some bourbon.
Let's get it.
Welcome back to Must Have Missed It. So, James, how did you feel about this movie, and how did this movie make you feel?
Feel like we kind of touched on it before, but just sad
and angry.
Ready to fuck some shit up. Yeah, man. I mean, going into a movie like this, you know how you're going to feel. It wasn't a surprise to me when the movie ended, and I just wanted to break things.
Yeah.
But you know, that's kind of how it goes. You know, this is a tragic situation. This is a fucking horrible thing that happened. If you watch this movie and don't come away feeling angry and ashamed, you're a sociopath. Just straight up.
I agree. So, did this movie live up to the hype?
Sure.
Yeah, it's hard to be really hyped about this kind of subject matter.
Right. But if you look at it objectively as a film with a purpose to tell a story, yes, this did a very good job of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a tough question to answer, I guess. Just given the material.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very satisfied with the way they conveyed this story.
In terms of music and movie magic, what stood out in terms of sound design or costumes, set design, score, visuals?
I think this movie did a really good job of setting the tone with sound, or even in certain scenes, lack thereof.
Yeah.
The absolute silence that occurs in some of the scenes in the background,
yeah,
just speaks volumes.
For sure.
You know, the scenes where there is that silence, like, it's absolutely necessary, and it's just so perfectly done. The movie is loud when it needs to be loud. It's quiet when it needs to be quiet. It just moves seamlessly throughout the entire movie. Nothing is jarring. Nothing rips you out of it. So yeah.
I thought this movie was gorgeously shot, exquisitely. The costumes, very period specific, fantastic in that regard. The Black Panthers are portrayed as being, wearing a lot of like leather jackets, things like that. But you'll notice in this movie that the Illinois chapter, that's not really their garb. They're more utilitarian. It's more like, hey man, it's fucking cold in Chicago. I need a coat that's
Right.
functional.
Yeah.
Like as cool as the leather jacket looks, like it's not really going to work where we are. So you'll notice that their costumes are more utilitarian, more military inspired, heavier jackets, jeans, things like that. As I said, this movie is just gorgeously shot. The scenes, especially the scenes where they're riding around in the car, just look gorgeous. I mean, the shootout scenes, the action is conveyed very well. There's never a sense that you don't really know what's happening, which tends to happen a lot in modern action scenes. Is a lot of quick cutting, and you're just not really sure how you can't orient yourself in the scene a lot. And I think this movie does a really good job with things like that. Was there anything that didn't work for you in this movie?
Aside from the actual content, not really.
Yeah.
I think everything was pretty tight in this movie. I don't think there are many throwaway scenes. There's always that part of me that wants to be nitpicky.
Mm-hmm.
But much like the last couple movies we've done, like apart from my least favorite scene, I don't have much that didn't work.
I have some stuff to talk about with regard to this, but I guess we'll get into it in award season.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and move on into award season. James, what was your favorite scene in Judas and the Black Messiah?
I had two, and I had to settle on one. So I'm going to settle on the one that got close to the most emotional reaction. I think the biggest emotional reaction I had to the movie was during the act where they actually murdered Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
But the scene where Deborah and Fred are discussing their baby.
Yeah.
And he discovers the poem that she wrote in her journal.
Mm-hmm.
That whole scene, personally, for me, without getting into too much, I've had a lot of conversations similar to this with my wife.
Yeah.
So the reason I think I settled on this one is just because of that personal,
really hits home.
Emotional impact. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is one of those scenes where the silence just speaks volumes.
Yeah.
There are pauses in between these characters speaking where they're thinking about what they're about to say because they don't want to hurt the other person.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also thinking about what they say and saying it carefully because this is a moment filled with a ton of gravity.
Yeah.
And these two actors in this scene just fucking take you away.
For sure.
You don't realize you're watching a movie. For me, feeling tightness in my chest talking about the scene just because of how it makes me feel. And these two people that honestly are unsure about the future and what that looks like.
Yeah.
So, just being able to explore both of their emotions in this scene is just crack to me.
Yeah.
It gives me all the feels. Yeah. I don't want to talk about my other one because you might have it.
Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the scene you chose, which was kind of my other pick. I'm gonna go with a different scene, but that scene is, I think, in terms of emotional impact, to me, that's the one that hits me the hardest. It's you understand where both characters are coming from. There's this movie. We were talking about this a little earlier, and this is a movie where I think people do more with their eyes than any movie I've ever seen. Like the acting specific to how people move their eyes, how people look at each other or look around in a scene, or what they choose to focus on in the scene is just extraordinary. And this is a great example. Daniel Kaluuya just has a gift, I think. We'll get to Get Out eventually. We'll cover that movie at some point, so you'll definitely see what I'm talking about in that movie. But conveying emotion just through his eyes, like how wide open they are in points, and just I can't really describe what I'm saying. It's almost an intangible thing,
well,
and
a lot can be learned from just looking at someone's eye movement.
Yeah, I mean that's why eye contact is so important.
Yeah,
yeah. And that's the scene where you'll notice that Dominic Fishback's Deborah is a lot of times where she says things where she wants to take a stand, but she still can't look at Fred Hampton in the eye when she says these things that she really wants him to understand and know, because she's worried, I think, maybe that they're hurtful or that he's going to take them the wrong way or whatever. So I absolutely love that scene. But my favorite scene in this movie is, I've already referenced it multiple times, I am a revolutionary.
That was my other pick. And
Yeah,
that's why
I figured it was.
Yeah.
That scene shows you why the FBI viewed Hampton as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
A guy that could rally people to that extent. Like when you watch that scene and you see Bill reacting to the speech, this is a guy that, you don't really know where he's at in terms of buy-in, but when you see this scene, you're like, oh, he's a Panther, and it's hard not to be swept up in the rhetoric and the oration, and it's just a fantastic scene. And I love Daniel Kaluuya's performance. Another thing we were talking about earlier. It's a big performance, and this scene is really, I think, the apex of that. Very charismatic. You understand why people would want to follow him, and he would have a cult of personality around him, and he could be the Messiah. So you understand why the FBI fears him and why they felt like he was a threat to the status quo, which he definitely was. But it's just an incredibly powerful scene, very emotional scene. If that scene doesn't get you hyped, you're dead on the inside.
Yeah, for real. I as something I wanted to mention earlier, the first speech he gives at the college in the movie where he just comes on the stage. He's like, I don't need a microphone. Y'all can hear me.
Yeah.
Just right from the jump, that confidence. Like,
yeah.
I've got this room.
He's used to doing this.
Yeah.
It's nothing new to him.
Just fucking oozing charisma, man.
Yeah. Least favorite scene. I have a feeling we're going to choose the same scene here.
It's not going to be different at all. Like if it's Hoover when he's talking to Roy Mitchell about what would your daughter do, or what would you do if your daughter brought home a Negro?
Absolutely.
Like, that's the hardest fucking scene in this movie to watch. I don't even know that it's that necessary.
I don't think it's necessary. My biggest criticism of this movie, as we discussed earlier, is there's just way too much J. Edgar Hoover, who is almost cartoonishly racist in this movie, which is fact. Like I'm not trying to discount the fact that J. Edgar Hoover was a terrible fucking human being and awful racist and created COINTELPRO, which is one of the most racist programs in the history of the FBI, and just did a lot of terrible things. But the amount of cartoonish racism we get out of this character is just a little much for a movie that takes itself as seriously as this does, and a movie that I want to take as seriously as this movie. And it's just a little too much for me. So I'm going to go ahead and say I have J. Edgar Hoover as my least favorite character. I have Martin Sheen as my least favorite performance in this movie. The amount of fucking makeup that they put on this guy to try to make him look like Hoover is just fucking ridiculous and distracting. And I cannot stand this character, and he's in entirely too many fucking scenes. I will get a little more into my reasoning for all these choices in a later category.
Yeah. And let me just clarify, when I say this scene is not necessary, I don't mean it's not necessary in the way that we need to understand what he is.
Right.
I just mean that, like you said, it's a bit over the top. It's a little cartoonish, and we get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little too much Hoover in this movie for me. James, who's your favorite character in Judas and the Black Messiah?
William O'Neill.
Nice. Good choice.
And he was not my first choice. But after watching this movie for a second time, I just was overcome with this feeling of like, this is the most interesting character in this story. And
yeah.
While there is a large part of me, like, so when it showed the actual William O'Neill interview in the end,
yeah,
I'm sitting there, and I remember Hannah's right next to me, my wife is right next to me, and I'm like, fuck you, man. Fuck you. Like, no.
Yeah.
You know, like, I was just so fucking pissed off. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, what was that like? Not to say I'm not defending William O'Neill. Like, he did a horrible fucking thing. He made the wrong choice. But he was conflicted.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't...
Well, I'll let you finish.
He didn't... I don't want to sound like I'm defending him. What I'm trying to say is that this is the most interesting character in this movie, and I just marvel at what it must have been like to be in his situation, because he made a decision, but did he really have a choice?
Yeah.
You know, it was his life, or do what the FBI wants you to do.
Yeah.
And no, it's not right. But yeah, man, it's a conundrum for me.
Yeah.
Just to explore this character, and what did he feel day to day? What were the struggles that he went through? Obviously, the way it ended for him, you know, his guilt got the best of him.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just such real human emotions and real human problems.
Yeah.
That I just, even now, trying to just put it all into words, I can't wrap my head around what a complicated situation this man was in.
For sure. I think the movie does a really good job of conveying that. There's a few scenes I think that are especially stand out with regard to showing the inner conflict. You know, when Bill meets with Mitchell towards the end of the movie, and Mitchell asks for the floor plan, and Bill's like, are you going to kill him?
Yeah.
You can tell, like, he's like, wow, this is not where I thought this was going.
Yeah.
You're asking way more than I ever signed up for. And then later, you know, at the apartment, when Bill approaches Fred and asks him if he can get him another drink, it's so obvious that he is conflicted about what he's doing. I thought it was really interesting. Shaka King, the director and producer of this movie, was doing an interview on the Big Picture podcast with Sean Fennessy. Props to the Big Picture, great podcast. Check it out, guys. After you watch ours, obviously. So he asked him, if he felt sympathy for the Bill O'Neill character, and he's like, well, not sympathy, like it's not sympathy, but at the same time, you have to appreciate the tragedy of Bill O'Neill's situation in his life. Like he was not conflicted when he was recruited by Mitchell. He was not. He became conflicted over time. Mm-hmm. He eventually started buying in and, started becoming close to Fred Hampton and, so that by the end, obviously the thing that he did weighed heavily on him. The fact that he ended up taking his own life shows that this was something that he never really got over. So this is a very layered character, and I appreciate a character that has this level of complexity. It would have been easy to paint him as just the villain of this movie, but the movie more, I think, honestly paints him more as a protagonist than it does an antagonist, and I thought that was a really interesting choice. That said, my favorite character in this movie is Deborah Johnson. A lot of times this award comes down to empathy for me, and it's the character that I empathize with the most. What an impossible situation to be in. The scene we talked about earlier, your favorite scene in the movie, is just, it's her. Again, Daniel Kaluuya gives a fantastic performance in this movie, but it is her carrying that scene, mm-hmm. and her emotion and her deliveries are just so on point. Not just in that scene, but throughout this movie. It's an amazing performance, and it's a character that I just really, I think a lot of, and I find aspirational, and absolutely love Deborah Johnson in this movie.
Yeah, I can't be mad at that. I wanna just rewind just a little bit because something I said is kind of bothering me. When I said that William O'Neill didn't really have a choice. What I mean is the FBI was going to do what they were going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was two different forms of incarceration.
Yeah.
Literal incarceration or figurative incarceration.
Yeah. So for anyone out there that I kind of felt kind of weird about saying that, I just wanted to clarify. He did have a choice. Mm-hmm. But whether he made the right choice or not, the outcome was still what it was going to be.
Right.
They weren't going to take that for an answer. So,
yeah. I mean, if it hadn't been, let's be honest, if it hadn't been him, it would have been somebody else.
Yeah.
If exactly. William O'Neill had gone to prison for those crimes that he committed, they would have just found somebody else.
Yeah.
That's the honest truth, the power that they had at the FBI had at the time was pretty much unchecked. So,
yeah.
Least favorite character, I'm assuming you're on the bus with me, or did you have a different choice for this award?
Look, man, I'm looking at my notes right now, and it's blank.
Yeah.
Hoover would have taken that spot. The only reason I didn't put him in there is because I wanted to have him in another award, and I wanted some
variety.
Variety, but it's Hoover.
Yeah, it's Hoover.
Yeah,
we won't spend any time on that.
Yeah. Moving on.
Favorite performance. You want me to start? I can.
I'm gonna. Yeah. Because.
Well, I think you should start because I have 3 names that I'm going to drop, and it kind of eats up the entirety of the favorite performance.
Well, I have one
pool,
less,
so
I have one less name than that. So, my official answer is Lakeith Stanfield, but I wanted to say Daniel Kaluuya. Kaluuya?
Kaluuya.
Oh yeah, sorry about that, Daniel. And it's the reason I settled on Stanfield instead is just because of a lot of the things that we've already mentioned with what he does with his eyes, with his face. The scene where they're talking about a rat.
Yeah.
That that man is there are certain performances when you're watching a movie that can completely take you out of the movie in a good way. And I mean, like, you don't feel like you're watching a movie.
Right.
You feel like you're in the room.
Yeah.
And Keith, man, he does it in this fucking movie. Like, this is our second movie this season with Lakeith Stanfield, and I feel like the first one we did, his character was kind of wasted. So really glad that we got a good one. Fast becoming a fan of this man, like a super fan. But I wanted to go with Kaluuya for I feel like obvious reasons. I mean, the man won an Oscar for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kept coming back to Lakeith and just being like, bro, he goes for it in this movie and he fucking kills every single scene that he's in.
Yeah.
Who's your trio?
So I guess I'll start with Kaluuya.
Okay.
So Kaluuya's performance in this movie is incredible. It is uncanny. The resemblance in appearance, mannerisms, speech patterns to Fred Hampton is just incredible. He put in the work on this role. My knock on the Kaluuya performance is it's just the type of big performance that like tends to get celebrated, and these are the roles that tend to overshadow other actors who put in a different type of work. I think Kaluuya had the easier job in this movie.
Stanfield's role is
compared
harder.
to exactly. Yeah. I think, and that's no knock. I think his performance is amazing. One of the best performances of the century so far, and was very deserving of the Oscar. I don't think he was nominated in the correct category, but it is what it is. I also want to highlight Dominique Fishback's performance in this movie, which is very layered and nuanced and earnest. And I just, again, all the things I said about Deborah as a character, that applies to Dominique Fishback as an actress. Just a fantastic performance in this movie. She is like kind of the emotional center of this movie, which this movie really needs, because otherwise it could just be relentlessly dark. So, but the best performance in this movie is Lakeith Stanfield, and it's not even close. I like I said, Kaluuya has kind of the easier job because he does the big things, the speeches, and the charismatic shit. And Stanfield not only has to play William O'Neill, he has to play William O'Neill playing William O'Neill as Black Panther. Yeah. So he's doing kind of double duty in this movie. So the scenes like when he meets George Sams and George Sams tells him about Alex Rackley, and he has to go from horrified about what his future could be to oh man, like playing it off, and good thing I wasn't there, and
I would have killed that motherfucker. Like, lucky I hadn't showed up. Yeah.
The scene where he is telling everybody at HQ that there's a rat, and almost gets in the fight with Jimmy and accuses him of being the rat, and then you see him leave, and just the smile on his face, how pleased he is with himself. I think that's what's really interesting about this character, is that he enjoys.
Yeah, he gets a rush.
Look, it's easier to steal a car with a gun than it is a badge. You really have to put in the work if you're going to steal a car with a badge, because you have to pull off the performance, and there's a lot that goes into making this scam work. You can pull a gun on anybody getting into their car and steal their car. It's not hard to do. It happens every fucking day. What he does is very performative and manipulative, and it kind of gives you a deeper understanding of who this guy is as a person. Like, he likes to have this control. He needs to be the guy who is the smartest guy in the room. Yeah. Like that is what he thrives on. And the performance that Stanfield gives is, you completely believe that he is this guy. And the eye acting thing that I was talking about earlier. There's a scene near the beginning when he first is getting the offer made to him by Mitchell, and there's just this brief thing where his eyes just flicker back and forth, and it's another one of those things that I can't just define why it's amazing, but it is just so fucking good and real and in the moment, and just the choices that he makes in this movie are incredible. Props to Lakeith Stanfield. Please be in more movies, man.
Right.
We need you to be in everything. So yeah, Lakeith Stanfield.
Yeah. And I think, man, like talking about the eyes, it's, the cliche, the window into the soul or whatever, but it's real.
Yeah.
Like if you look anyone in the eyes long enough, they're gonna look away.
Yeah.
Because that's our defense.
Right.
We don't want someone staring into our eyes for long enough because that's going to give something away.
Right.
And I think that when you see that kind of thing in a movie, I think that's why it hits so hard, because your eyes don't really lie.
Watch his eyes during the scene where Judy Harmon is interrogating him. It's just fantastic acting. It's so
when they're in the car.
It's
making them hot wire.
So fucking good, man. I absolutely love his performance. Like it is just it is maybe my favorite performance so far of the the 20th 21st century. I'm obsessed with Lakeith Stanfield's performance in this movie.
Yeah, man.
Least favorite?
Hoover.
Yeah, Hoover. Martin Sheenus Hoover. Moving on. Coolest Tang. Who do you have for Coolest Tang?
For me, it's Chairman Fred.
Yeah, good choice.
Look, man, I'm not gonna sit here and preach socialism and not act like that's not the man I'd want to be around.
Right.
This is really where my heart lies, man. People, the individual.
Yeah.
Meeting everyone's needs.
Mm-hmm.
This is a man that, I think it would be an absolute joy it would be an absolute privilege to spend your days with him.
Yeah.
Where his motivations lie. As just, someone I aspired to really be like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my guy.
So what I really appreciate about the Hampton, I'm just going to say character because I don't know Hampton as a person, so I have to go off what I see in this movie, is that he cared about people on both the micro and the macro level. Like he cared about people in terms of society and society's problems. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that's hard to do when you're focused on societal problems is also be focused on the individual, because when you're thinking big picture, it's hard to focus on that little detail that, you might miss because you're so focused on the big picture. And as he's portrayed in this movie, I think it's a really great balance of, practice what you preach, and, he's not thinking about there's never a moment where he appears selfish in this movie. There's not one time does he come across as thinking about his own best interest. Gets out of prison. You want to go get some food? No, I want to go to headquarters. Let's go to headquarters. Yeah. That's what I need to go see what the situation is there. He's given money by the Crowns a chance to flee to go wherever he wants and have the money to take care of himself. And
we're gonna honor Jake.
We're going to honor Jake. We are going to build the hospital like that. That is what we said we were going to do, and we're going to follow through on the mission. So, and that's a perfect example of the micro macro, where he cares enough about Jake that he's like, we have to honor Jake by creating this clinic that will serve the people of the community. So that's a perfect example. So like I have a lot of respect for that pick as Coolest Tang. It wasn't my choice. I went with Jake.
That was my alternate. Yeah. Go ahead.
True ride or die. I mean, he you can definitely tell he has the warmest demeanor of the Panthers.
Yep.
It was really funny to me going back and watching after I'd watched my initial rewatch and going back for the rewatch after that to see that he was the character that Bill was making fun of for having so many pistols in the car. You're like, wait, Jake? Really? That was the guy that had so many guns? No, because he says winners. How many pistols you got, winners? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I thought that was funny. That I was like, wait, Jake's the one with all the guns? What's going on? But, he's the guy that goes to visit Jimmy in the hospital. He's the guy that, is the one that goes to avenge Jimmy after he's murdered by the police. And, he just seems like a really warm person. You hear his mom describe him, and he just seems like a really good guy.
Yeah.
So I went with Jake. Toughest hang. I wonder who we're going to have for toughest hang. I'm sure everyone is sitting on the edge of their seats right now in pure wonder.
How many J. Edgars would you bet that this is a Hoover? I don't know. Guys, it's fucking Hoover.
It's fucking Hoover. What a fucking piece of shit. I said I was going to talk more about this character in a later category, and this is when I meant to do it. But really, I don't have a lot to say about J. Edgar Hoover, one of the worst Americans that ever lived. I cannot think of a single great thing accomplished by J. Edgar Hoover, by honest means, for sure. What a piece of human fucking garbage. Rest in fucking hell.
Yeah. There's some people, I think everyone has value except for this guy.
Yeah.
Fuck him. You're
Fuck
trash in the dumpster. All right. That'd be Top Bop.
Top Bop.
My man helped me with this one greatly. I there wasn't a whole lot that stood out to me initially.
Guys, James didn't know what Shazam was.
I
had to introduce him to Shazam today.
This shit blew my mind. I was like, yo, what's that? He described.
I was like, yo, I got a Shazam a track from this movie because I'm not sure what the name of it is, and I don't want to fucking go through all the credits to try to figure it out. He's like, what is Shazam? And I was like, oh, it's you just play part of a song and it fucking tells you what the song is. He's like, huh?
Dude, like, this is probably not news to any of y'all, but it's still blowing my mind. This shit got it within like
2 seconds. It's like,
not even. Yeah.
I know this incredibly obscure song from the 60s. Yeah.
Deep Gully by the Outlaw Blues Band. Is that a song any of y'all have heard of?
Quick,
Shazam got that shit like.
What's your favorite lyric from Deep Gully? It's a trick question. It's an instrumental.
But this is the song that plays right after O'Neill gets the car from the FBI. Again, Josh helped me a lot with this pick. There wasn't a whole lot to me that stood out initially. But we did some listening before recording at a few tracks, and the guitar in this song is
so
pretty
sweet.
Fucking dope.
Yeah,
it's very catchy.
The guitar, the bass line.
Yeah,
it's jarring when it comes in because the horn, the trumpet is very. It sounds kind of like a car horn blaring. So you're like, wait, is somebody? Oh no, this is a song. Okay. So yeah, it's a little disorienting when it first comes on, but I mean, it's a bop for sure. Like I said, the bass line is sweet. The guitar riff is just very fun. It was in consideration for me, but I went with "Fight for You" by H.E.R., the Oscar-winning song. It appears in the end credits. It's just a jam. Kind of reminds me a little of Redbone, Childish Gambino in terms of vibe. Just a great song. I wish it had been featured somewhere in the actual movie itself. I think that would have really helped. It would have immediately stuck out to me as a top bot for this movie. I had to kind of really think about this award, but just a fantastic track, very uplifting, powerful message, great instrumentals. I just really enjoyed it. Best fit What do you have for best fit?
I went with Deborah when she comes to pick up Hampton from Menard.
Oh yeah, with that shawl. Yeah, it's nice. That's dope.
She's got it's like I don't even know. I almost wanted to call it like a peacoat kind of thing.
Like a sleeveless peacoat kind of. Yeah.
But just her whole red dress, red coat,
like a peacoat poncho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. She just looks very fucking classy, just elegant.
That's a great
beautiful. Look. Yeah, that's what stood out to me.
Yeah, it's a great look. I have Bill when he meets Mitchell near the end of the movie, walking into the restaurant with the sunglasses on, just looking so fly,
Super
man. Like
sleek.
He is capitalism is working for Bill apparently. So props to him, I guess. But yeah, I can't lie. It's a great look.
Yeah.
So the kind of awkward John C. Reilly Award. Who is your choice for the John C. Reilly for this movie, James?
I went with Preacher Man.
Preacher Man,
the leader of the Young Patriots.
That was somebody I had in consideration as well. Why'd you choose Preacher Man?
I didn't want to replace any of the black characters in this movie with John C.
Yeah, I hear you.
It just didn't feel right. Also, I didn't want to replace necessarily a lot of the white characters in this movie with John C. Reilly because I like John C. Reilly.
Yeah.
So this was kind of a middle ground. His character doesn't get a whole lot of time. It's a character that I don't think was intended to be funny, but I found kind of funny just because how do you believe in that flag? No, I just thought it would be a fun John C. pick to put him in there.
Yeah.
And not much more to it than that.
Doesn't overwhelm the movie. Like I said, it's a good pick. It's somebody that I was thinking about. I ended up going with Special Agent Carlisle. Pretty minor part in the movie.
About him too.
And I kind of chose it for the opposite reason that you chose Preacher Man, which is like I kind of want to challenge myself with the John C. Reillys and put him in roles where I'm like, I don't like this character. Will I still like John C. Reilly if I have to see him playing characters like this fucking guy?
Bro, John C. is Edgar or J. Ooh.
That was who I had originally. I changed it literally. 5 minutes before we started recording, I typed Carlisle's name instead of J. Edgar Hoover's. That was, again, because I don't care for the performance of Martin Sheen in this movie. And maybe that could make the character more palatable for me. I doubt it. The way the character is written, again, is a little cartoonish. I love this movie. I love this movie. I think it's incredibly well written and acted. I just think there's just a little too much reliance on a fucking cartoonish villain.
Yeah.
Brings us to our zombie apocalypse survival team. Give us a summary of who you have so far on your team, James.
All right. So I have Professor Hagrid.
Hagrid mows the fucking grass.
You're not wrong. I have E.T. from E.T. I have Jim from 28 Days Later, Marta Cabrera from Knives Out, Neytiri from Avatar, Theo from Die Hard, Jack from The Incredibles.
Literal fucking baby.
Red shirt baby. I have Kiwoo from Parasite. And as long as we do not have to coin flip for this one, I have Chairman Fred Hampton.
Cool.
Look, guys, it's no secret if you've been watching the podcast, I struggle with words sometimes. I don't always articulate things the way that I would like to. And what better person to have on my team to do that for me than Fred Hampton?
Yeah. That's a good choice.
This man can captivate a room. That's not really going to work well with the zombies necessarily. But when we do encounter those other human survivors, Fred is the person that I want speaking for our team.
Yeah.
So who do you got?
Pretty brilliant. I went with Judy Harmon.
Hey, Judy. I was hoping she would get some love.
Yeah, I needed her to get some love somewhere here.
Yeah.
I mean, I picked it. I think it's a utilitarian pick. She's a very capable person, naturally suspicious, which is helpful, especially, when you're dealing with people that you just don't know much about. You're meeting new groups of people, and you have to just be able to figure out, quickly how to trust them or whether or not you can trust them and what secrets they may be hiding. And, I had Benoit Blanc, who's kind of useful for this, but Judy's also, a stone cold badass.
Yeah.
Like when it's time to get to shooting, she's going to get to shooting. She is not afraid. So she's kind of a nice utility person. I guess I didn't think about Fred Hampton the same way that you did. I was too worried about him usurping me as the leader. Like, oh man, no, I can't have somebody more charismatic than me on my team, because that could be a problem.
Right.
Then everyone's following. Then he gets to ride Buckbeak, and I end up having to ride with fucking Michael Taylor. But, so yeah, I chose Judy. She just seems like a well-rounded person. She could fill a lot of different roles depending on who's already been taken by zombies and such. So she would round out my team pretty well. So she would be added to the team of Buckbeak from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Still the second best pick in the entirety of the zombie apocalypse survival teams. I think E.T. is the winner, hands down. It's not even fair.
E.T. is OP.
Yeah, E.T.'s power set is just fucking ridiculous. So after him, I think Buckbeak's like the second best pick. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. I have Selena from 28 Days Later. I have Michael Taylor from E.T. Benoit Blanc from Knives Out. I have White Navi Jesus Jake Sully from Avatar. I have Carl from Die Hard. I have Violet Parr, Human Shield from Incredibles, and I have Ki Jung from Parasite. So I'm feeling pretty good about my team. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, my alternate for this was actually Jack Winters, and for a lot of the same reasons that you already mentioned.
Yeah, Jake.
Yeah. What?
Jake.
What did I say?
Jack.
I did?
Yeah.
I fucking said Jake in my head. Sorry, guys.
It's all good. We can fix it in post.
Jack Winters. Who the fuck is that?
All right, that leaves us with one more award to give out tonight, James. So who is your MVP for Judas and the Black Messiah?
Sometimes it feels cheap to give this to the writer or director. But without Shaka's vision to make this film, like, would it have gotten made? Would it have been this? So that's what kind of makes me want to lean to Shaka. But I didn't. I went with Daniel Kaluuya.
Fucker.
I just took Josh's answer. Apparently. So I'll let him wax on this as I feel more confident in the way that he's going to answer it. But
I don't necessarily have a lot to say about Daniel Kaluuya as the MVP. His performance is so key to this movie. If his performance does not work, this movie does not work.
Yeah.
It does not matter how good Lakeith Stanfield is or Dominic Fishback or any of the supporting actors in this movie are. If his performance is not top notch, this movie fucking falls apart. And he gives it, man. Like I said, it's a big performance. He really goes for it. I think for the majority it works. I don't think every aspect of this performance is perfect. That's not what I'm saying, but I think it's great for this movie, and I have no major issues with the performance. But I just don't think this movie works at all without Daniel Kaluuya. I considered Shaka, but considering that it wasn't even really his idea, this wasn't, multiple different people kind of collaborated with him to get this movie made. So I didn't think Shaka was a super viable candidate in my eyes. I considered Lakeith Stanfield also because his performance, I think, is, again, hands down, head and shoulders above every other performance in this movie, and it's not even particularly close. But if Daniel Kaluuya's performance as Fred Hampton doesn't work, this movie doesn't work.
See, and that's what I wanted to say. If you don't have a good Fred Hampton, you can't make this movie.
Yeah,
if you don't have a good performance.
It's just too charismatic a person to not have a performance that matches that charisma. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, it's Daniel Kaluuya. I didn't even really consider anybody else for MVP. It was him. The first time I saw this movie, I was like, this movie is on his shoulders. Again, not to me the best performance in this movie, but if his doesn't work, then this movie doesn't work.
Yeah. And that's, like I said with Shaka, like you said, there were a lot of people that collaborated to make the movie, but that was the only reason I was leaning kind of towards him was that, hey man, like the way this movie fucking came out.
Yeah.
Like, fuck.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Know. Like, I'm no disrespect to Shaka King. This movie is obvious. Incredible, very well directed. Like I said, I love the way that it's shot. Performances across the board are fantastic. So, really props to the entire team behind this movie. A story that absolutely needed to be told, and I'm glad that we got a version of it that did justice to Fred Hampton's legacy. So, anything else you want to add about Judas and the Black Messiah before we sign off?
Just everyone remember, anywhere there's people, there is power.
Yeah. People equal power. James, would you watch this movie again?
Probably with someone else to share the experience.
Right. Not in a hurry to subject yourself to the I get that.
I'm glad that I watched it.
Yeah.
I really am.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the content of this movie is not one that I'm rushing to watch again.
Yeah, it's tough.
Again, if I'm watching it with someone who hasn't ever seen it, absolutely, because I fully believe that this is a story that you need to know about.
Yeah, it needs to be shared. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of movies that I feel that way about. Kids, glad I watched it. I'll never watch it again. Requiem for a Dream, glad I watched it. Unless we do it for this podcast, I'll never watch it again. These are generally dark movies and things like that, and this movie is definitely in that vein where it's just, it makes me so angry to know that our government was able to do this shit, and it's gonna make the anger is not going to dissipate, because the next movie that we have coming up is kind of a little too similar to this movie in some ways. So, we'll be talking more about a lot of the same themes that we talked about in this movie with the next one. So sorry to get everybody's, I don't want anybody to not be excited about the next movie, because it's a really good movie. But, it's just some of these movies are kind of dark, and that's what this one was.
Such is the nature when you're dealing with content like this, man.
Yeah. Oppressive systems, fascism, capitalism, racism. It's heavy subject matter. But again, it's a story that needed to be told, and I'm glad that we got a movie that does this justice. You know what you should do? Us justice. By subscribing to the YouTube channel and the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Send us some emails, please. Our inbox is so empty right now.
Fuck.
musthavemissed@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at musthavemissed. Follow us on Twitter at musthavemissed. Follow us on TikTok at musthavemissed, and join the Discord. We're so lonely in the Discord chat. It's so barren in there right now.
It's like, can hear your own thoughts.
Yeah, we don't need that. Trust us. Especially after watching this movie. We appreciate everybody for watching and everybody for listening. We look forward to seeing you in about 2 more weeks. See you soon. Thanks.
Bye.